Imagine a moment when the world holds its breath. A tiny elephant calf, trapped in a muddy pit, her cries echoing through a Montana valley, her life hanging by a thread. Now picture a herd of elephants refusing to leave her side, their trumpets, a desperate plea for help, and a small town of strangers drawn by those cries, risking everything to save her. This is the story of Hazel, a tale that begins with a single act of loyalty and blooms into a testament to community. A saga so raw and real, it'll grip your heart and never let go. In Willow Creek Valley, where the Rockies whisper tales of grit, loyalty isn't just a word. It's the pulse of life, binding elephants and humans in a dance of survival. Community isn't just a place, it's a promise, forged in mud and storm, to stand together when hope seems lost. Hazel's fight isn't just hers, it's a mirror of our own battles, a piercing insight that loyalty and community can move mountains, even when the odds scream defeat. Through every trumpet, every rope pulled, loyalty shines as the herd's unbreakable vow, and community rises as the town's fierce heart. This isn't just a story. It's a call to awaken the loyalty in your soul and the community in your world, a journey of ish and shh that'll leave you changed forever. Here's Part 1. The Trapped Calf of Willow Creek, in the heart of Montana's Willow Creek Valley, where golden plains stretch beneath the shadow of the Rockies, lives a creature of awe-inspiring might and heart, the elephant. These majestic beasts, relocated decades ago to a vast wildlife sanctuary, roam freely across the grasslands, their massive forms a testament to nature's grandeur. Elephants are no ordinary animals. They're giants with minds sharp as a tack, hearts loyal as a soldier's oath, and a bond so tight they'd sooner face a storm than leave one of their own behind. But in the wild, loyalty meets danger head-on, and one crisp autumn morning, a tiny elephant calf found herself in a fight for her life. A fight that would rally a herd, a town, and a team of heroes in a tale no one would ever forget. The Willow Creek Sanctuary, a sprawling haven of meadows and winding streams, is home to a tight-knit herd of elephants led by a wise matriarch named Juniper. The herd, a family of 12, moves like a living fortress, their trunks swaying in rhythm, their trumpets echoing like a mountain hymn. The locals in nearby Willow Creek town, ranchers, teachers, and shopkeepers, revere these gentle giants, seeing them as neighbors, not just wildlife. They swap stories at the diner about Juniper's knowing eyes, or the way the herd mourns a fallen member, a respect rooted in Montana's deep love for the land. But on this fateful day, the herd's youngest member, a spunky female calf named Hazel, just 6 months old and barely a fraction of her mother Clara's size, faced a peril that would test everyone's resolve. It started innocently enough. The herd was crossing Willow Creek, a shallow stream that sparkles under the morning sun, when Hazel, full of youthful curiosity, wandered too close to a muddy bank. The recent rains had turned the soil into a treacherous mire, and in a heartbeat, Hazel lost her footing. With a startled squeal, she tumbled into a deep sludge-filled pit, a sinkhole carved by the creek's overflow. The pit's sides were slick as glass, and as Hazel thrashed, the mud sucked her deeper, water seeping in to make a deadly slurry. Her cries pierced the air, sharp and desperate, sending the herd into a frenzy. Clara, Hazel's mother, trumpeted, in anguish, her massive frame trembling as she tried to reach her daughter. But the pit was too narrow for the adult's bulk, their every attempt to dig or pull Hazel out only collapsing more mud onto her. Juniper, the matriarch, circled the pit, her trunk raised like a beacon, calling the herd to action. They stomped, they bellowed, their cries rolling across the valley like thunder. It was as if they knew their voices could summon help, a plea to the humans they'd come to trust. But time was slipping away, and Hazel's tiny body was tiring, her eyes fluttering with exhaustion as the mud clung tighter. Hours ticked by, 3, then 4, and Hazel's struggles grew weaker. The herd's panic swelled, their trumpets now a haunting chorus that echoed off the Rockies. Clara refused to leave the pit's edge, her trunk stroking the air above Hazel, as if willpower alone could lift her free. The herd formed a protective ring, their loyalty unshakable, but their power useless against the pit's grip. Across the valley, in Willow Creek town, the sounds reached the ears of folks sipping coffee at Mabel's diner. At first, they thought it was just the wind, but the cries grew too raw, too urgent to ignore. "That's the elephants," said Old Man Tucker, a retired rancher with a weathered face and a heart for the sanctuary. "Something's wrong." A group of townsfolk, Tucker, Sarah the schoolteacher, and Jake, a young mechanic, decided to investigate. They grabbed flashlights and jackets, their boots crunching through the frost-kissed grass as they trekked toward the creek. The closer they got, the louder the elephants' calls became, a sound so gut-wrenching it felt like the earth itself was crying. Sarah, who'd once helped tag sanctuary animals, recognized the distress signals. "They're calling for help," she whispered, her breath visible in the chilly air. The group moved cautiously, knowing wild elephants could be unpredictable, even ones as familiar as Juniper's herd. But fear gave way to duty. These were their neighbors, after all. As they reached the creek, the sight stopped them cold. Hazel, barely visible in the muddy pit, her trunk raised weakly, Clara, her mother trumpeting in despair, and the herd pacing in a tight circle, their eyes wide with fear. Tucker's heart sank. "She's just a baby," he muttered, his voice thick. The townsfolk knew they couldn't free Hazel alone. Her size, though small for an elephant, was still beyond human strength. Jake sprinted back to town to call the sanctuary's rescue team, while Sarah and Tucker stayed, watching helplessly as Hazel's movements slowed, her tiny frame sinking deeper into the mire. By dusk, 6 hours after Hazel's fall, hope seemed as thin as the autumn light. The calf's eyes were half closed, her breaths shallow, and the herd's cries had turned mournful, as if they sensed the end. Clara leaned closer to the pit, her trunk brushing the mud, her low rumbles a mother's plea. Then a distant rumble broke the silence. Not an elephant, but the growl of engines. Headlights pierced the twilight as the sanctuary's rescue team arrived, led by Dr. Emily Carter, a wildlife vet with a reputation for saving the unsavable. With her were Rangers Tom and Mia, carrying ropes, shovels, and a plan born of desperation. Team assessed the scene. Hazel was trapped in a pit 8 feet deep, the mud now hardening around her, making every move a risk. Emily's face tightened as she saw the calf's fading strength. "We need heavy equipment," she said, "but we've got to move fast." The Rangers radioed for a bulldozer from a nearby construction site, but it wouldn't arrive until morning. For now, they could only widen the pit by hand, a grueling task under the herd's anxious gaze. The elephants, sensing help, stayed calm but close, their trunks raised like sentinels. Clara's eyes locked on Emily, as if pleading for a miracle. As night fell, the townsfolk brought blankets and coffee, refusing to leave. Sarah organized a rotation to keep watch, while Jake helped the rangers dig. His hands blistered but unyielding. The herd's loyalty inspired them. Elephants never abandon their own, and neither would Willow Creek. But Hazel's condition worsened. Her cries grew faint, her body still. Emily fed her water through a hose, whispering, "Hold on, little one." The herd's trumpets softened, a mournful hymn under the starlit sky, as if they too were praying. Then, just before dawn, a new crisis struck. A pack of coyotes, drawn by the commotion, emerged from the shadows, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. The herd roared, forming a tighter circle around the pit, their massive feet stomping warnings. Juniper charged at the coyotes, scattering them. But the distraction cost precious time. The rangers, exhausted, feared the bulldozer wouldn't arrive in time. Tucker, watching the herd's defiance, rallied the townsfolk. "We're not losing her," he growled, grabbing a shovel. The community dug alongside the rangers, their breaths clouding in the cold, their hands raw but determined. As the first light of dawn broke over the Rockies, the bulldozer's rumble echoed through the valley. A beacon of hope. But Hazel's time was running out. Her eyes were closed, her trunk limp. Clara's trumpets turned frantic, a mother's last stand. The herd joined in, their cries shaking the earth, a call that seemed to reach the heavens. Emily, tears in her eyes, vowed, "We're bringing her home." The stage was set for a rescue that would test every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and heart. A story that would etch itself into Willow Creek's soul. Part 2. The fight for Hazel Dawn broke over Willow Creek Valley, painting the Rockies in hues of gold. But for the weary souls at the muddy pit, time felt like an enemy. Hazel, the tiny elephant calf trapped in the sinkhole, lay eerily still, her trunk limp, her breaths so faint they barely stirred the mud. Clara, her mother, trumpeted a heart-wrenching plea, her massive frame trembling as if she could will her daughter to live. The herd, led by the wise matriarch Juniper, stood in a steadfast circle, their eyes locked on the pit, their loyalty a beacon in the cold Montana morning. The townsfolk of Willow Creek, Old Man Tucker, Sarah the schoolteacher, Jake the mechanic, and the sanctuary's rescue team, led by Dr. Emily Carter, clung to hope as the bulldozer's rumble grew louder. But the fight to save Hazel was about to test their courage like never before. The bulldozer, driven by Mike, a gruff construction worker who'd left his site to help, roared into the clearing, its blade gleaming like a knight's sword. Emily barked orders, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "We need a sloping trench to pull her out. Careful, every move counts." The rangers, Tom and Mia, guided Mike, marking the pit's edge with stakes. The herd shifted uneasily, their trunks raised, sensing the machine's power. Clara's low rumbles seemed to urge them to trust, but Juniper's sharp trumpet warned of their vigilance. The townsfolk cleared brush and steadied ropes, their hands raw from hours of digging, their hearts pounding with the weight of Hazel's fading life. Mike began carving the trench, the bulldozer's blade slicing through the mud with agonizing precision. Every scoop was a gamble, too deep, and the pit could collapse, too shallow, and Hazel would stay trapped. Emily crouched near the pit, feeding Hazel sips of water, whispering, "You're strong, girl. Just hold on." Sarah, watching Clara's desperate gaze, felt tears sting her eyes. She thought of her own daughter, safe at home, and murmured, "We're not giving up, Clara." Jake, hauling dirt with Tom, glanced at the herd's united front and swore under his breath, "These elephants, they're family, just like us." But nature, as if testing their resolve, threw a cruel twist. A storm, brewing unseen over the Rockies, rolled in with a vengeance. Dark clouds swallowed the sun, and a biting wind whipped through the valley, carrying the first spatters of rain. The mud, already treacherous, turned slicker, threatening to undo the trench's progress. Thunder cracked, spooking the herd. Juniper trumpeted, rallying them. But Clara surged toward the pit, nearly knocking Mia off her feet. "Back, Clara, please!" Mia shouted, her voice lost in the gale. The townsfolk huddled, their jackets soaked, but Tucker growled, "We've faced worse blizzards. This ain't stopping us." Then disaster struck. The bulldozer's engine sputtered, choked, and died with a sickening groan. Silence fell, heavier than the rain, broken only by Clara's anguished cry. Mike slammed his fist on the dashboard, cursing the old machine. "She's flooded! Damn storm!" Jake, the mechanic, pushed through the crowd, his face set. "Let me look. I've fixed worse." He dove under the bulldozer, tools clanking as rain pelted his back. The herd, sensing the setback, began to trumpet in unison, a deafening chorus that shook the valley. Hazel, stirred by her family's call, lifted her trunk weakly, a spark of fight left in her. Emily's heart sank as she checked Hazel's pulse. Faint, erratic. "She's got hours, maybe less," she told Tom, her voice cracking. The rangers tried digging by hand, but the rain turned the pit into a soupy mess, sliding back with every shovel. Sarah rallied the townsfolk, shouting over the storm, "Form a chain, pass buckets!" They worked like a single organism, scooping mud, their faces grim but unyielding. Tucker, his arthritis flaring, grunted with each bucket, muttering, "For you, Hazel!" The herd's cries grew frantic, as if they understood the clock was ticking. Jake, soaked and mud-caked, found the bulldozer's issue, a clogged fuel line. "Gimme 10 minutes!" he yelled, hands shaking as he worked. The coyotes, emboldened by the chaos, returned, their howls circling the clearing. Juniper charged again, her massive form a blur in the rain, scattering them. But the distraction rattled the team. Mia, holding a rope, slipped and fell, twisting her ankle. Tom pulled her up, shouting, "Stay focused!" The townsfolk, inspired by the herd's defiance, formed a human barrier, banging pots to keep the coyotes at bay. Sarah, her voice hoarse, sang a folk tune her grandma taught her, a Montana hymn of grit and hope, and the others joined in, their voices rising above the storm. Minutes felt like years, but Jake's wrench finally clicked. The bulldozer roared back to life, and a cheer erupted, raw and triumphant. Mike, wiping rain from his eyes, resumed digging, carving the trench deeper. Emily tied ropes around Hazel's torso, her hands steady despite the cold. "On my count!" she shouted. The rangers and strongest townsfolk, Tucker, Jake, and others, gripped the ropes, their boots slipping in the mud. The herd fell silent, watching, as if holding their breath. Clara's trunk reached toward Hazel, a mother's silent prayer. With a heave, the team pulled, muscles straining, hearts pounding. Hazel stirred, her legs kicking weakly, but the mud clung like a demon. "Again!" Emily yelled. Thunder roared, rain blinded them, but they pulled, voices merging in a primal chant. Hazel's body shifted, inch by agonizing inch, until, with a final surge, she slid up the trench and onto solid ground. The crowd gasped, then cheered, their voices drowned by the herd's thunderous trumpets. Hazel, trembling but alive, staggered to Clara, their trunks entwining in a tender embrace. Juniper raised her trunk, leading the herd in a joyous cry that echoed off the Rockies. a hymn of gratitude and relief. The storm eased, sunlight piercing the clouds, as if nature itself celebrated. The townsfolk, drenched and exhausted, watched. The reunion, tears mixing with rain. Sarah hugged Jake, whispering, "We did it!" Tucker, leaning on his shovel, grinned, his gruff facade cracking. Emily, checking Hazel's vitals, smiled for the first time in hours. "She's a fighter," she said, glancing at Clara, whose eyes seemed to hold a knowing glint. But then something extraordinary happened, something no one in Willow Creek would ever forget. The herd turned to face the rescuers, their massive forms silhouetted against the dawn. Juniper stepped forward, her trunk raised high, and trumpeted a sound unlike any before. Not fear or sorrow, but a clear, resonant note of thanks. The others joined, waving their trunks in unison, a salute that felt like a handshake across species. The townsfolk fell silent, awestruck. "They're saying thank you," Mia whispered, her ankle forgotten. Tucker, wiping his eyes, muttered, "Darned if that ain't the most human thing I ever saw." The gesture, fleeting but profound, left a mark on every heart. A reminder that love and gratitude know no bounds. As the herd gathered around Hazel, guiding her back to the sanctuary's meadows, the townsfolk lingered, reluctant to leave the scene. They swapped stories, laughed and cried, their bond forged in the mud of Willow Creek. Emily and her team packed up, but not before promising to monitor Hazel's recovery. Sarah, inspired, vowed to start a school program about the sanctuary, teaching kids to protect their wild neighbors. Jake, quieter than usual, confided to Tucker, "Never thought I'd care this much about an elephant." Tucker clapped his shoulder. "That's what family does to your son." Days later, the herd was spotted crossing Willow Creek again. But this time, Hazel stayed close to Clara, flanked by Juniper and the others, their steps careful but sure. The townsfolk, watching from a distance, felt a quiet pride. They'd saved more than a calf. They'd strengthened a bond with the land and its creatures. At Mabel's diner, stories of the rescue grew into legend, a tale of grit, heart, and a herd that said thank you. For Willow Creek, it was a moment to cherish, a reminder to stand by their neighbors, human or not, and to fight for the wild places that make Montana home. But the story didn't end there. Months later, Emily received a call from a national conservation group inspired by Hazel's rescue. They wanted to fund the sanctuary's expansion, ensuring more elephants like Hazel could thrive. Sarah's school program took off, with kids planting trees along the creek to prevent future sinkholes. And Jake? He started volunteering at the sanctuary, his wrench now fixing fences instead of bulldozers. As for Hazel, she grew stronger, her spunky spirit a spark in the herd. The townsfolk swore they saw her wave her trunk at them once, as if she remembered. Whether she did or not, Willow Creek knew one thing for sure. In the heart of the Rockies, love and loyalty could move mountains, or at least a muddy pit. Part 3. Hazel's Legacy. The seasons turned in Willow Creek Valley, the Rockies standing, sentinel as winter's snow gave way to spring's emerald bloom. Hazel, the spunky elephant calf, once trapped in a muddy pit, was now a year old, her tiny frame growing sturdy, her eyes bright with mischief. She tromped through the Willow Creek, sanctuary's meadows, always flanked by her mother Clara, and guided by the wise matriarch Juniper. The herd, stronger than ever, moved like a living hymn across the grasslands, their trunks swaying in quiet joy. But for the folks of Willow Creek Town, the memory of that stormy rescue burned bright, a tale of grit and heart that sparked something bigger, something that would echo far beyond their valley. In the months since Hazel's rescue, Willow Creek had changed. The story of the calf, the herd's thunderous thank you, and the townsfolk's courage spread like wildfire, told and retold at Mabel's diner, in schoolyards, and even on the evening news. Old Man Tucker, once a gruff rancher, became the town's unofficial bard, spinning the tale for wide-eyed tourists at the general store. "Them elephants," he'd say, his voice softening. "They're more human than some folks I know." Sarah, the schoolteacher, launched her sanctuary program, teaching kids to plant trees along the creek to prevent sinkholes, each sapling a promise to the land. Jake, the mechanic, traded his wrench for a volunteer badge, fixing fences at the sanctuary, his quiet pride a far cry from the restless kid he'd been. Dr. Emily Carter, the wildlife vet who led the rescue, saw Hazel's story as a call to action. She'd spent sleepless nights drafting proposals, her desk littered with coffee cups and dreams of a bigger sanctuary. Her efforts paid off when the National Wildlife Alliance, moved by news of the rescue, pledged funds to expand the sanctuary's borders, adding hundreds of acres for elephants and other rescues, like a pair of orphaned grizzly cubs now romping in a nearby enclosure. Emily, speaking at a town hall, her voice steady but warm, said, "Hazel reminded us what's at stake. This land, these creatures, they're our family too." The crowd roared, their applause a vow to keep fighting. But the truest celebration came on a crisp June day, when Willow Creek threw its first ever Harmony Festival to honor Hazel's first birthday. The town park, usually quiet save for kids' baseball games, burst into a riot of color. Banners painted with elephants, food trucks serving Montana barbecue ribs, and a stage where fiddlers played tunes as old as the hills. Sarah's students, wearing T-shirts with Hazel's silhouette, handed out seed packets, their laughter mingling with the scent of fresh hay. Tucker manned a booth, selling his photos to fund the sanctuary, his gruff smile hiding how much it meant to see folks care. Jake, now a ranger trainee, led tours to a safe viewing platform, pointing out the sanctuary's newest residents, a hedged, rescued wolf pup with a playful yip named Dawn. The festival's heart was a ceremony at dusk, when the town gathered near the creekside willow tree, planted in Hazel's name. Emily stood before them, her boots dusty, holding a plaque etched with the names of every rescuer, human and elephant. "This tree," she said, "is for Hazel, for Clara, for Juniper, for all of us who stood in that mud together." The crowd hushed as she read the words aloud, each name stirring memories of rain-soaked ropes and trumpeting cheers. Sarah, clutching her daughter's hand, felt a lump in her throat, remembering Clara's desperate gaze. Jake, standing with Mia and Tom, grinned, his heart full in a way he'd never known. Then a sound rolled across the valley, not thunder, but the unmistakable trumpet of elephants. The crowd turned, gasping, as Juniper's herd appeared on a distant ridge, silhouetted against the sunset. Hazel, now nimble, pranced between Clara and Juniper, her trunk raised like a flag. The herd paused, facing the town, and Juniper let out a long, resonant call, echoed by the others. It wasn't fear or sorrow, but a note so clear it felt like a song, a thank you that shivered through every soul. Tucker, leaning on his cane, whispered, "There they go again, saying howdy." Mia, her ankle long healed, laughed through tears. "It's more than howdy, it's family." The townsfolk watched, spellbound, as the herd turned and vanished into the twilight, their steps a promise to endure. The festival ended with a bonfire, stories swapped under a starlit sky, and a vow to keep the sanctuary thriving. Sarah's students planned a letter campaign to protect Montana's wild lands, their young voices fierce with purpose. Jake, inspired by Hazel's spirit, enrolled in a wildlife course, dreaming of a ranger's badge. Emily, back at the sanctuary, watched Hazel play, her heart swelling with hope. "You started something big, little one," she murmured, as Dawn the wolf pup yipped nearby. Years later, Hazel's tree stood tall by Willow Creek, its branches a haven for birds, its roots deep in soil saved by a town's love. The sanctuary grew, a beacon for conservationists nationwide, its gates open to school kids and scientists alike. At Mabel's Diner, Hazel's story was legend, told with a wink and a coffee refill. But its truth ran deeper. It was a tale of a calf who fought, a herd who stayed, and a town who answered. A reminder that in the heart of Montana, where the Rockies touch the sky, loyalty and love can save a life, and maybe a world. The saga of Hazel, the elephant calf, rescued from a muddy pit in Willow Creek Valley, weaves a tapestry of profound lessons that resonate far beyond the Montana grasslands. At its core, the story teaches us the power of unwavering loyalty, seen in the herd's refusal to abandon Hazel, a reminder that true bonds endure even the darkest trials. It underscores the strength of community, as townsfolk like Tucker, Sarah, and Jake united with strangers to save a life, showing that collective action can overcome impossible odds. The narrative reveals the depth of empathy across species, with the herds trumpeting thanks, and Clara's maternal devotion blurring the line between human and animal hearts. It champions resilience, embodied by Hazel's fight to survive, and the rescuer's grit through storms and setbacks, proving that hope can spark miracles. The story also highlights stewardship, as Willow Creek's festival and sanctuary expansion reflect a duty to protect our wild neighbors, urging us to cherish the fragile balance of nature. Finally, it celebrates legacy, how one small act, like saving a calf, can ripple into a movement inspiring kids to plant trees and a town to dream bigger. These lessons offer a beacon for our lives today. In a world often fractured by division, Hazel's tale calls us to stand by those we love, to reach out to strangers in need, and to listen to the silent cries of the earth. It urges us to act with courage, whether facing personal storms or global challenges like climate change, and to nurture empathy for all living things, from neighbors to wildlife. We're reminded to build communities that rally together, to leave legacies of kindness, and to protect the planet for future generations. So, let's take a page from Willow Creek. Show up, stay loyal, and fight for what matters. Because, like Hazel's herd, we're stronger together, and our smallest acts can echo like a trumpet across the ages.